Well, there you have it, folks. Just before we move on to the rest of the program this evening, how many teachers are here? Come on, stand up, stand up. That's it. Good, 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 good. All right, all right. That's good, that's good. There you have it. Three really dynamic presentations of new movements and activities in terms of, and organizing styles and everything else. And I want you to, if you can, please take a few moments to think of the kind of questions you'd like to ask. When you do formulate your questions, please no speeches, just a brief introduction of about up to 45 seconds if you can, and then into your question, because I think we want to get the most out of these wonderful resource people as possible. Can somebody turn the lights down above here, because they're very hot? Is that right?
I'll turn one of the other ones on, because it's just like
okay, that's well, is that getting better? It's getting better. Okay, all right. Okay, and as well, I would like to remind you that tomorrow we have a workshop that will begin at 9 a.m. in the morning, and we hope that many of you will be willing to continue this discussion this evening by participating in a workshop that brings the insights that we've been discussing this evening down in terms of, into our own community here in Windsor, Essex. So we really hope that many of you will participate in that workshop tomorrow. Okay? Okay. Just before we get into the questions, I also just want to acknowledge the fact that Ken Loenza Jr., we've heard a lot about tonight as being a driving force in this community to make this community assembly happen, and I think we owe him a big round of applause. And secondly, normally, I suppose one wouldn't want to necessarily bring all this into one sentence or whatever, but I think that, I want to say personally, and I think the Making Waves team wants to also say this, is that we really appreciate the guidance and the support and the strength that has been given to us by Ken Loenza Sr. in this whole process. Okay, questions. Can we don't have microphones out on the floor, is that correct?
That's all right, we're union people, we have big mouths.
Well, we'll test your mouths in a minute, okay? All right, that's it. We'll try that way. We've only got the one microphone, and we'll get the responses here. Let's see how it works in terms of standing up and stating your position and your question, okay? Please.
I have a question.
I'm going to give you the mic if you'd like.
Frank McInally with Unifor, just a rank and file member. One of the questions that I have is I'm glad to see everybody here. I was hoping to see more, but I'm glad that people made it did. You kind of summed it up at the end when you said that your challenge is to try to engage. You have to engage the community and figure out a way to make these coalitions work with each other, because everybody up there, you guys all had something that happened that was directed at you guys, an attack by the bosses, by the government, where it kind of, I don't want to say it made it easy, but at least you had something to reach out to your members or to members of your community to say, look, they're attacking us, so what can we do to kind of bring everybody together. The biggest challenge that I see, and I'm hoping maybe you have some ideas, is, I work at Ford. I talk to a lot of people at work, and I talk to a lot of people about this. I try to get people to come on. I don't know if anyone made it or not, but it's engaging people that are actually under attack. Because, like I said, you guys, it was a direct attack, but it's more insidious among. How do you get that message out to say, get people's faces out of the television, watching the mainstream media, and like, how do we get our message out there? I guess other than social media, because I have tons of friends on Facebook, and I try to get the message out about things like this. How do we do that? How do we engage people?
Great question. I'm just going to see if there's another question, okay? Another question out here? Or do you feel the ice has to be broken by the answer to that question? Huh?
I would agree with that question because, like, I'm on Facebook and people like my posts all the time. But when I put this rally on Facebook, I didn't get one like. Are people afraid? Like, are they afraid? I think people are afraid what people will think of them and stuff if they get involved.
Good follow-up, I think, okay? Any more along those lines before we hand it over? Okay.
The question I have is mostly directed to our brother from Chicago. I don't need the microphone. The Chicago teachers experience happened in parallel time frame to what has been going on in Wisconsin. Now, some of us know that, some people here know that I've been posting out the solidarity sing-alongs and all the sit-ins that took place at the Wisconsin legislature. Can you talk a little, compare and contrast what made your situation more successful? I mean, I know Rahm Emanuel was also advising some of the Wisconsin right wing about what to do. But if you could help discuss that, because one of the things that they did was attempt to recall the governor. And that may or may not have been a good choice, and you'll know because you were closer.
Okay,
I don't need a mic either. I like to make a quick point. There's about 100 people here. 100 people here is bigger than any membership meeting we've had in this community in the union. So give yourself some credit for participating. And then I think the things that we can talk about tomorrow and where people have to go from here is to understand that all three advocates that spoke today said it wasn't an immediate victory. It was a 1, 2, 3-year strategy that ultimately got to the goal. And I think that if you want fast results, we're going to be in a serious trouble. If you want a longer-term strategy and how we beat this economic systems and beating down workers and those most vulnerable, then we can do it. And my last point is, I want to recognize her because when I listen to the three incredible stories that are to build confidence and give us some inspiration that if we fight, if we have a strategic plan, if we work together, building those coalitions and give people space to do it, you can win. There's nobody in this community, nobody, that has a better story than Sister Noonan. Sister Noonan could give us 60 years of activism with many victories and many failures. But the facts of the matter is many people today are better off as a result of her activism many years ago. And maybe sometime in the next, maybe not tomorrow, but the next forum will bring in her stories on her activism and how we can respond to the challenges of 1930 and 1940 are the exact same challenges that we're having today, except the other side is way more sophisticated and have more capital than you've ever had in your lives. So we got to beat capital with human capital. And guess what? We've always won on human capital. We can do it.
Okay, that's a great start off to answer, or to respond, I should say, to the questions. And it's not a question-answer thing in the sense that everybody feels they have the answer to everything. What we're trying to do is to create a dialogue here that will help lay the groundwork for building in the future here in Windsor, Essex. So I'm going to move it along. Is it okay, Charlene, or do you?
You know, to the question about getting people engaged, I guess I would just say, you know, yes, we had a very direct attack, but I mean, who isn't under an attack right now? I mean, you know, in every workplace, right? Whether it's you know, new management policies and supervisory roles, whether it's cuts happening in your community, whether it's, you know, lean production in auto and working more out of us for, you know, no additional pay, whether it's, I mean, it's just across the board. I think there is a real sense of people needing more. I don't think it's a question of apathy either. I mean, there must be like no more universal human thought than I hate my boss, you know? So I just like, you know, amongst our membership, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't easy to start getting people out there, and our members certainly weren't apathetic. And the other thing it wasn't, you know, is amongst our members, amongst teachers in general, they always think the solution to people not coming out is, well, we have to educate them on the issues. And it's like, you know, I hate to break it to the teachers, but it's like, people are pretty well educated. Like our members, when they didn't get their 4% raise, they knew that sucked. They got it. They know that they wanted their raise. And like parents whose schools are like flooding on a regular basis, they know they want a building that doesn't flood. So I just don't buy that it's about educating people either. I really think it's fundamentally about people feeling like they can't do anything about it. And frankly, inviting me to a meeting does not necessarily, I've been to lots of meetings in my life. Most of them have not fixed my problems. And so I just do think a big part of what we need to figure out here is like, how do you make people feel like they can do something about it? The things that made the biggest difference in the CTU, it wasn't the big press releases or, you know, it was the moments that made people feel a little more powerful. It was when we won a fight at a school or had a, you know, something that affected 40 people, but we made it really visible to the rest of the membership. Anytime somebody landed a punch, we told that story 100,000 times. I mean, you know, just we would tell that story over and over and over to make those victories visible. So, you know, when people don't come to it, yeah, it's the most common thing in the world, in our union and probably yours. Somebody's been a long-time activist and they grouch about like, nobody comes to the meetings, they don't want to come to the meetings, and you want to hit them upside the head because they don't come to the meetings. And it's coming from the right place, but wanting to hit people upside the head is not a very effective way to then get them to the meeting. It's got to be about like trying to figure out why they don't think they can do anything about the stuff that they really do already care about. About Wisconsin, I don't have a great answer for you other than in a lot of ways, you know, while Wisconsin and Chicago were both defensive fights, we were under attack. In Chicago, I think we did a better job. And I don't mean to belittle what happened in Wisconsin. It was a huge inspiration for us. But I think we did a better job in Chicago of putting forward a vision of what we were fighting for. That at a moment when people were telling us, well, just ask for a moderate raise, try to get yourself a seat at the table, we said, well, no, you're telling us to get a seat at the table where our union is the sausage that's going to get served up for everybody to eat. And that instead, you know, we went out there and said, like, you know what, this isn't just about protecting against cuts. We're going to demand smaller class sizes. We're going to demand art for every student. We're going to demand more schools while they're closing schools. And it was a vision that like really helped it feel, made our victory, even though it was mostly about stopping cuts, made it feel like a step forward for the movement.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to reflect on about the Wisconsin piece other than I was like, yeah. But I really like what you know, the great uncle Ken Sr. just said about pointing out this grandmother, this kukum in the audience that has all this tremendous wealth of activism and just community and the story of that community here. And I think that you know, I really want to reinforce that statement that he put out there. It's those stories and what my brother here talks about, you know, what we've been using in I don't know more and you know, and just indigenous resistance. You know, most of our indigenous cultures, and they're very diverse, embrace, you know, being, what's the word, orators or whatever. You know, our languages are not rote. They're oral histories, and so you have to be a good storyteller. It's just part of our culture. And I think that there's something really powerful about the narrative-based storytelling strategic framework that really, quite frankly, is an important thing for us as social movement organizers, social union organizers, to be able to get really good at. Because it's about what's going to hook people. You know, what's going to get what's really going to pull them in their heart and make the decision that I got to stand up and do something about this. And I think that, you know, for us, one of the compelling things that we've been able to equate in terms of the link between Indigenous peoples movement and the workers movement in this country is that, you know, we all have a common enemy in the form of corporate power. We've all been decimated by this extractive industries-based economic model. And if you're from the manufacturing sector, you all seen what happened when our dollar got set off by this petrol price regime. You know, we've seen all of the jobs run out of CAW and other unions from that sector, you know. And I think that for us as Indigenous peoples that have seen our land base and our right to hunt, fish, and trap in those sacred places where these extractive industries are taking place, you know, we've had similar impacts in terms of our ability to feed our kids, you know, in our own way. And so I think that developing those stories about struggle and about, more importantly, resiliency is what is going to motivate the base to stand up and to fight for justice. You know, today's Ken Jr. drove us from the airport along the river, and I got to see the great city of Detroit. I was asked by Tony, you know, why is that your favorite city? And I said, you know, I love Detroit. It's my favorite city ever since I was a little kid because it's the only city in America that has what I feel is an ability to really, you know, share that story of resiliency in a post-industrial era with what those people in Detroit are doing right now, building that city back up, the resiliency that they're showing. Is comparable, you know, well, it's not comparable, but there's just a connection there with what Indigenous peoples have been going through for 500 years in terms of not the struggle or the suffering or any of that, but the resiliency of human beings. And I think that the more we can identify those empowering stories and use that story-based telling strategy, that's a very powerful thing, especially when we're confronting corporate lawyers and statisticians and, you know, all of those people that use numbers and they wag that dog, you know, you get those corporate lawyers and spokespersons and slick PR firms up on a stage or in the media against a young person or an elder from a community who tells a story of resiliency, they look like assholes. They do all the work. We don't even have to get into a debate about numbers, because they just look like assholes. And so, yeah, storytelling. And what is the narrative? What's the story, you know? You find that, you're gonna win.
I thought that was the Windsor skyline. I'm a bit disappointed. Sorry for pressing the mic earlier. Those two answers were fantastic. Perhaps even more so than stories of empowerment, we need stories of victory in those trying times for the left. We need stories where our structures, our unions, our workplaces have been the theater of positive victories against corporations, against big capital. And we have those stories. We have lots of them. Many of us don't know our own history in unions, in our communities, and it's something that truly deserves to be dug up and to be shared with fellow co-workers, to inspire them, to tell them that these structures and these locations of empowerment and of political discussion, of collective political action, were once used to great effect, to achieve great victories for the left and for us. This is what we did during the student strike, and you're right. It's also very emotive, and it clashes with the statistical, economical worldview of the right wing and of those who seek to oppress us through economic reforms.
Great, thank you. Thank you all three of you for that. Before we go on with other questions, I want to turn it over to Ken Jr., who has a comment to make.
Joel just asked me to make a few comments. One of the things, people should know this, We said this to the labor leadership as we went around and the citizens in this community as we organized this event, that we weren't going to judge this event by how many people came. We were going to judge this event by the quality of the contribution and commitment people were prepared to begin with. I think, the student strike, you hear the very early days of when there was 10 and 15 people out handing out leaflets and talking to people. And there's that old story about how do you organize? You talk to someone. No, what's the story? Well, you got to talk to someone. And then Joel has also told me that, just the thoracic. I know Tracy opened up with that a little bit. But we actually had a group of people in our community. And I want to say Taras and Adishak did a great job in LaSalle by bringing that community together. There was leaders in the community that were talking, even some of them that aren't our friends at particular times, but they were talking and understood it was important to get together. But there's something else that happened that was important that I think people don't really know about, is the fact that we actually said that we were going to get 100 or so organizers, and we were going to go knock on doors. And we got Natalie Muir from the Healthcare Coalition to put together 40,000 leaflets. And we said we were going to go and talk to people in Teresa Peruza's area. And it was really interesting that after this, today, Premier Wynne was coming into town. And we actually called Teresa Peruza and said that we'd actually like to sit down and have a conversation with her about other cuts that the Liberal government was moving in towards. And that we said that we were going to recharge the campaign, we were going to put people out there today. And we were going to start delivering those leaflets. And it was interesting that today she says the Premier wants to meet with you guys as soon as possible. so I think that's a perfect example once you start introducing people power. And then one last story I just want to share, and I kind of screw it up a little bit because I'm not the greatest with my history. But somebody tells me that there was an army leader named Cromwell. A long time ago, he had this powerful army. He took it up and went to fight the king. And he came back and he lost. And he had about 1/3 the army after he returned. And he said that he's actually going to go back and he's going to fight again, but he's going to fight back with a smaller army. And someone said to him, well, how do you expect to win with a smaller army if you couldn't win with a bigger army? He says, when I go back this time, my army's going to know what they're fighting for. And I think that's an important point as we start here today. We might have a small group, but I think my father eloquently said, this weekend is about developing a plan. It's about developing a plan that's going to inspire our workplaces. It's going to inspire our communities. It's going to come from our community. But from there, even if any plan doesn't work, unless you don't have people that are going to go out and have those conversations. Have those conversations about what it is that people care about. Not just, again, about what our issues are. Let's find out. Let's listen. Let's listen to what it is that they care about. And let's think about how we can connect people to those types of organizations so that they can make a contribution in a way that they see fit. So again, I just want to say I'm incredibly inspired, and thank you again for giving us the opportunity to run this tonight. But it's going to be people in this room that are going to make a difference. What happens at Heinz is gross. Yeah. The same attacks that are happening in the teachers in Chicago, that's the plan for teachers here in Ontario. You just have to listen to Hudak. You listen to what's happening with our healthcare system and look at what's happening with our environment. There's a lot of people that are concerned. There's a lot of people that are scared. But we have to respond even if it's just a matter of being out of dignity. So again, I want to thank everybody very much. We're going to fight back and we're going to start to win.
Okay, we're going to see if there's another round of questions. I also just want to add to that last point and those last points. How many of you ever have come to an event where the place has been full and nothing's happened afterwards? Huh? Okay, let's keep that in mind because that produces very little. Having people come out to hear great speakers and then walk away and nothing happens, that isn't organizing, that's not planning, that's not building power to win. Okay? Alrighty, let's see, another round of questions. Yes? Can we have...
Oh, I don't need that either.
Oh, gee.
So many of us have experience doing this. Right now, we are under a dominant corporate narrative. And that narrative is about corporate values. I want to hear from you, what do you think those corporate values are? Should we develop a counter narrative? And what is going to be our counter culture against the corporate culture? Because you've all talked to about, each one of you talked about building culture in your own ways and through your movements. This is building a culture and education, our own values. What are our values, the way you see them? What are the corporate values that exist?
Very good question. What are our values as you see them collectively, I guess, as well as and secondly, what kind of values are we up against in terms of the corporate power itself? What undergirds their values, right? Any other question? Another question? I can't see very well. Okay, come
I'm
in.
sorry. Are you guys aware of Bill C-377 and also the right to work legislation that Food Act's been trying to put through?
Yes.
Against our unions and stuff. I haven't heard nothing about it, and that's a big issue.
You want to say a little bit more about it?
Well, Bill 377 is for all union members. They're trying to put it through so that if you, I think it's over $5,000 as a union member, if you, let's say you passed away and your spouse inherited your, or got your life insurance money, that would be disclosed to the public. It'd be public knowledge. And a lot of public records and stuff are trying to put all what unions are doing to the public. Yeah, everything. And that's something that is, privacy. You know, it's nobody's business what we make or what we get from the union or what we're paying with dues and etc. But Bill C-377, people need to look at it, they need to research it, and they need to get on the government about it. And also the right to work. You know, we pay, as union members, we pay union dues. Now, someone, if this came into effect, someone that doesn't, or may be in the union, chooses not to pay dues, the union still has to represent that member. So, if you think that's right, you pay dues and the member beside you doesn't, that's not right either.
You want to get rid of the rent for me? Right. Okay, so Bill C-377, we'll see if anybody has comments on that up here. Keeping in mind that tomorrow in the workshop, we're likely to get into that in more detail, possibly if you and others raise it. Okay? Any other questions? Let's just take one more.
It's not so much a question as a comment. I just wanted to tell you, when I came in, I was really looking for some strategies. I became a new member organizer, and I was looking for some real functional strategies. What I hear from you, it was, you know, an escalation of the tactics, but also eventually every one of you got public support. And you got public support because you brought your issue beyond personal and you made it the public issue. It became, why are we fighting for a, you know, minimum wage to be brought up? Why are we, you know, like, it wasn't just about what we were doing as employees. You were doing as employees, you related that to the public itself. And the public support is why you're winning. And my idea is this: if I'm going to repeat history, I want to repeat your history and your winning. So thank you very much.
Okay. Are you okay on the questions? You need to repeat them at all? No? Okay. Why don't you start off?
Yeah, on the question of values, in our Cree culture, I'm Cree. I come from a community called Pugadawagan First Nation, northern Manitoba. It's the furthest eastern Treaty 6 First Nation. And, you know, we grew up with these stories about when the snow is snowing and it's flying sideways, you should never go out during that time because that's when the Weektigoo would come out. And the Weektigoo is a winter spirit, and it's all-consuming. And if you're not strong and you go out when the snow is flying like that, Weektigoo could get at you and make you all-consuming. Weektigoo is a cannibal, and it eats everything. And there's many different representations of that cannibal spirit, that all-consuming, always hungry spirit in a lot of indigenous cultures. And but there's also contrary stuff onto it as well, in terms of it's not exactly evil either. There's a purpose for that in our societies. And I think that, you know, the values of corporate culture, neoliberal free market economics, is Witigu run amok. And if allowed to continue, you know, I mean, we can't fathom how far it'll go. It'll eat the whole world. And so, and we see that now with climate change and the lengths that humanity will go, corporate, those representing that neoliberal vision of the earth and humanity, will go for profit and power, I think, more directly. And so, you know, the values that, at least I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for the collective of all movements or all Native people or whatever, but I fundamentally believe that, you know, this movement for all members of a five-fingered nation of humanity, you know, this moment in time that we're in, with all of this global crisis that we face, and this responsibility to localize power in the interest of globalizing justice, is fundamentally rooted in the process of reevaluating our relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth, and reaffirming our role within the circle of life in the biosphere that our community exists in. And I believe that Indigenous peoples, you know, that have only 360 million of us on the planet out of 7 billion people, but within that 360 million Indigenous peoples across the planet, are 86% of the world's cultural diversity, languages. And within those languages is a framework of how to do exactly what I just described. And at this moment in Canada, we have a tremendous polarity that exists between that vision and that Witigu that I was talking about, which is free market economics. And, you know, and I think that values, you know, that the question around climate change and all this stuff, these are moral questions, you know, and these are symptoms of the problem, which is our common foe. And that is what Uncle Ken Sr. talked about, which is capital, you know, this concentration of capital, this all-consuming Witigu, you know, and we need to respond to it. And so, yeah, in terms of the other questions, I don't remember what they were, but yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I don't have an answer to my brother up there with the Bill C-377 question, but I will say this. If you think Bill C-38 and Bill C-45, like the mega crime bill, and the mega, you know, destroy water protection and everything else under the sun bill, Bill C-45 was bad, there's about 7 bills that the conservatives are like just waiting to pull the trigger on. That are going to, if you think Bush and Cheney did a job on America during their 2 terms, just you wait if this prime minister gets in power in 2015. You know, while I don't prescribe to organizing under electoral terms, we do have some very real time frames that we need to scale up social movement and social unionism. And the way to connect those things together, and I believe that, you know, that's what we got to do. We got to scale things up. We got to look past the elections. It can't be about Harper. It's got to be about the economics, you know, because that's what this is fundamentally a fight between. It's a fight between corporate power and capital the sacredness of Mother Earth and her carrying capacity to sustain this psychotic economic paradigm and the people that depend on her for their livelihood.
Thank you. I'll first touch up on the bills. You're right, there are 7 bills and more waiting for us in the pipeline, I guess, quite literally. And but there are also some pressing bills that are attacking labor that are going to be discussed very soon. 3 of them died in the prorogation, thankfully, and will be brought back in a jiffy, I'm sure, if this government gets reelected or even during the next legislature. That's the one you talked about, disclosing, mandatory disclosing of expenses over $5,000, which of course is not something that corporations have to abide to. If not, we would know much more about the bonuses that they give to their CEOs every year. There's also one private member's bill that directly attacks the RAND formula that was amended in Senate. The Senate one was C377, sorry. And finally, there's Bill C4. I very much like the name, C4. It refers to an explosive. And this one would strip members of the public service of their right to strike, deeming most public service employees as essential employees dispensing essential services. Now, many of us workers across Canada have fallen under the same in the same trap over the last few years. For instance, as I remember, Toronto subway or public transport workers. And this is something that we should fight. The public sector unions should put all of their energies in fighting because, of course, they cannot afford to lose that fight, and that will directly lead to a strong and swift degradation of public sector employees' workplace rights and working conditions. And I hope they will do this. I work for a public service union, and so far we haven't seen the mobilization material, and I hope someone from PSAC is in this room and will answer my pleas. About values, this is a much more complicated question, obviously. I think we have to identify these values of the corporate system as values of capitalism. We have to say that word because it allows us to understand them very well. And I like to think that of all of the people who are living under the guise of the capitalist ideology, maybe half of them are there because they think they're being pragmatic, they want to change the system, they've given up. Sadly, by doing so, they're propping up a system that has been proven cause of deep inequality since early 19th century England. And then you have the people who strongly believe, well, I won't use any expletives or insults, this would be in bad form. The people who strongly believe that these values will continue keeping the privileged. It's an issue of privilege being reproduced over many generations, and power being concentrated in the hands of the few. These are the values of the right, and I do think that when ideology is stripped away, when that filter is gone, we will be able to put our values across much more effectively. I won't list the values, of course. I think this is a space where we can maybe talk about a common framework of values, and this starts, I suppose, tomorrow.
On this bill, I don't know the ins and outs of the bill, but I'll make a brief comment just based on what you said. There's been a lot of similar laws getting passed in the United States. A number of the states surrounding Illinois, where I live, have become right-to-work states recently. And let me be clear, these laws are bad, they are unfair, these same rules would never apply in a corporate context, they represent part of the attack that's going on working people. I also would say, just as someone who has spent a good chunk of my entire adult life, working in the labor movement, in labor unions that actually do have to disclose what we pay every single staff person, that do have to disclose our expenditures, that do have to disclose all kinds of ridiculous things. It's an unfair setup, but we do. I've also spent a lot of time, I really grew up in a union where the majority of our members didn't have collective bargaining rights, much less, you know, closed union shop. And I would just say that there's an extent. So while these laws represent part of the attack on us, there's an extent to which our like terror about them is also based on the weakness of our movements. You know, that you know, frankly, there aren't a whole lot of expenditures in our union that we're that embarrassed about them winding up public. That in my old union, the one where, you know, the bulk of our workers didn't have collective bargaining rights, there were 20,000 workers who had no right to collectively bargain. There was no closed shop. There was no agency fee. You either paid union dues or you paid nothing. You chose. And out of 20,000 workers, over 12,000 of them had chosen to pay dues in order to, you know, this is a 12,000 member union who had built this organization as part of a struggle to like win collective bargaining, to win better pay, to win, you know, changes in their industry. And there was another group of 5,000 workers who legally didn't even have the right to have dues deducted from their check, and 3,000 of them paid dues in cash or credit cards every month. And in Australia, they passed a law a number of, you know, a few years back where the entire Australia, I don't know, whatever it is in Australia, lost payroll deduction. It became illegal. No payroll deduction, gone. Entire unions went belly up. It's like horror stories of union presidents showing up at the auction, bidding on the union's charter just to have evidence that their organization had once existed. And you know, to me, what like an insane, like the union couldn't figure out how to ask their own members to pay dues. Like, are we really at this point? And so, I don't mean to dismiss your concern. It's like these are part of the attack from the right, but I also think part of the solution to that has to be the way that we organize on the ground. I just had the privilege of meeting with an Australian organizer this past week. They do have payroll deduction, but they have changed the majority of their members over to paying dues directly to the union on their credit cards rather than just going through employer payroll deductions. Anyway, it's a technical point. I guess my broader point is that part of our fear from this comes from the weakness of our actual organizations. To values, I just want to say one thing on values. You know, corporate values, the values of capital, certainly it's profit and private control and a healthy sprinkling of white supremacy. On our end, like, how do we build a different set of values? I just think often we treat that as a question about how do we like win some public message. I think there's a real question of starting this stuff internally. You know, there is a question of how do we, you know, build an analysis amongst our own rank and file? How do we engage in sort of like deep political development of our side? And you know, there was a lot of concern within the CTU, even amongst people who are allies in sort of our reform caucus, who felt that we had gone too far left, that when we were pushing for an analysis that was really about, you know, that the union had to go hard at banks and corporate actors and social justice messages, that, oh, that's too far left, that's not where the members are at. What they're really worried about is their principal's a jerk. What they're really worried about is, you know, this attack for a longer school day without pay. These are the practical things they're worried about. And, you know, I think we have to realize that, like, arguing for our values, arguing for our analysis, it's not just a matter of principle, it actually is a matter of strategy as well, you know? That when the mayor was attacking us about the short school day, which of course was not actually true, you know, our members very defensively started wanting to like hold public grade-ins. They wanted to do grade where they would all go out after school or over the weekend into some public area and grade papers, just to like show the public how many hours they really put in. That was a fine idea. We were saying, like, you know, what if we got a little more aggressive? What if we held grade-ins in the lobbies of the banks that are ripping off the school system right now? And so around the city, we got members who, like, that wasn't quite where they were at, but we like pushed people to go one step further. And all of a sudden our members are holding grade-ins in bank lobbies and explaining to passersby that this bank made this much profit off of the schools, which laid off this many teachers, right? While doing their grading. And it helped develop like a political understanding amongst our own membership, a confidence amongst the rank and file, not just amongst the like people who get to go to Windsor and give speeches, you know, that like of what this analysis is really about. Those TIFs I was telling you about, that tax increment financing thing, Penny Pritzker, the billionaire Hyatt heiress, while she was on the Board of Education, while she was considering a vote on closing schools in the city, where they claimed they would save $500,000 per school that they closed. Her hotel chain was accepting $5.5 million in TIF money, in school money, to build a new hotel in the city of Chicago. And you know, we really tried to put out this analysis that said, this isn't abstract, this is a real thing. 11 schools that get closed are getting closed to pay off the Hyatt. And this woman gets to vote on it and then profit off of it. And where in years past we would have held our first rally against school closings as a picket line outside of the Board of Education, instead we had 500 teachers, parents, and students take over a Hyatt hotel and like hold their rally inside of the Hyatt. And I just think like we were able to present this stuff not just as like, you know, some abstract political education to our members. We were able to like provide political education and training around these things. We were able to help build this like set of values and analysis, but also as part of the strategy to win. Like we're pretty convinced that like the Hyatt cares more about losing their money than they care about the education of black students. Like it's just a hunch we've got, you know, that like you want to impact the Board of Education, let's hit them in their pocketbooks. Let's present an analysis that threatens their real interests, what they really care about.
Okay, are there any other questions that people wish to get at right now, or shall we bring this to a close?
Just give us the answer, Tony. The answer.
The answer. Well, just before you leave, the person that asked the question about strategy to begin with, I just want to point something out, and that is that we do not see bringing experts as we have here and suddenly giving strategies and answers to all our questions. We have to wrestle with that ourselves. That's why this workshop is to be held tomorrow, so that we can work together to build a strategy for Windsor, Essex. So let's keep that in mind, okay, for tomorrow? And the second thing I want to say, I'll give you a moment. The second thing I want to say is that we've heard, in response to your questions tonight, some interesting responses, in the sense that both your questions and the responses reveal two really important things. One is that stories and telling stories are an important part of organizing. It's an organizing tool that we should not forget, and in fact should enhance and be prepared to utilize much more. And secondly, values are also very important. We tend to have lost sight, I think, in much of our organizing about the importance of values. And both those points are made in our Making Waves document in our approach, is that storytelling and values are a really important part of the organizing process. In this country, we tend to put an emphasis on facts. Well, yeah, we've got lots of good research, we've got lots of facts, but facts themselves don't necessarily move people to act. And we should always keep that in mind, I think, is that more than facts are going to be necessary. Doesn't mean to say facts are important, but facts are not the only thing that moves people. In fact, stories and values move people more. Okay, one final...
I don't need the microphone.
I know you don't! Nor do I!
I just wanted to point out that tomorrow's workshop should be really interesting and fun. And one of the things we can all agree to think about is bringing someone else with you to the workshop. Someone that you might say, hey, I can pick you up. Tomorrow morning, we'll go get coffee, we'll go to workshop together, or swap off. You know, maybe my kid can babysit your kids. You know, that is how a stepping building. The other thing is, if you can't come, you have to send two in your place because you're so important, it takes two to replace you. Yeah. The other thing is, tomorrow night is going to be social. And, you know, it's not like you have to have attended school to go to the parties. If your friend can't come to the workshops because they got kids going to hockey or you know, relatives visiting from out of town, say, well, bring the whole bunch to the social. because part of our values are enjoying each other's company and having fun. Anyway, that's what I was going to say.
I just want to add to Victoria's point too. If you can only come for a little bit tomorrow, come for a little bit. If you can only come for a few hours because you have those obligations with your family, drop in, see what we're doing. Stay for an hour, stay for a half an hour, whatever you can do.
Bring the kids.
Bring the kids, just to see, you know, what we're going to work on tomorrow, what kind of ideas we're going to come up with out of everything that we've heard tonight. My wheels are turning. I hope everyone else's wheels are turning about ideas that we can do, creative actions. So bring them tomorrow for as much time as you can. And Enver, I think, had wanted to say something as well.
I just want to make an announcement that November 30th, next Saturday, there's a candlelight protest. Windsor Stars called it a vigil. It's not a vigil, it's a protest. It's been called by an elementary teacher from Leamington to make it unacceptable that Heinz, 100-year-old Heinz plant, is unilaterally closed by the US billionaire Warren Buffett. So I encourage you all to come. It's at 9:30 p.m. It's after the Santa Claus parade, so it's literally a community event. The community is being invited to go to the front of the Heinz plant right after the Santa Claus parade, bringing candles. So we encourage all the unions and others to stand with the people of Leamington to show that this isn't just about solidarity with those workers, that this is, it's not fighting for them, this is fighting for us. This is our community that's being destroyed, it's our schools that are going to be wiped out, it's our students who are going to be affected by it, so it's quite significant that a teacher has actually called it. So please try to come out, bring your family and friends, and definitely bring your flags to show that it's unacceptable for Canada to be put under attack by these vultures from the United States.
That's a very good way of ending off tonight. I just want to say that we've discussed this in the Making Waves team as well. We want to do what we can to really support the Heinz, the struggle around the Heinz plant and its impact on the community. So that's something, I hope that's something that we end up working on along with other issues to some extent tomorrow. Okay, so we'll see you. Have a good evening.